Stand clear.
100% Wild podcast.
So for all you listeners,
hello and welcome to
definitely not your favorite outdoor podcast.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild podcast, episode number 352, fresh off just the tip rut series that we did with Terry Drury, which is awesome. Glad so many people tuned in for that.
Yeah, I think people really enjoyed it. We're seeing a lot of comments in the Rack Pack. That's been great. You're Tim Chelswick. I'm Matt Drury.
That's right.
But we have another more important Drury, one that kills stuff. Mark Drury, how's it going?
Hey guys, how's it going?
We're okay.
Not as good as you, but we're good.
Well, neither of us have killed anything, so we're glad to talk to somebody that has.
Well, we've killed more time than anything. Man, has it been a real roller coaster of a lot of hours in the stand this year and we've killed some deer, but it doesn't feel like we've seen a lot of deer in order to kill those deer. So if people out there are listening, and it's just an off year, I agree with you. I think it's been an extremely tough year between the temperatures that have consistently been above normal, the record-breaking mass crop we have out there, and the touch of EHD in pockets across much of the country. I'm hearing about it more and more, and people are still finding dead deer. I found one 2 or 3 nights ago laying there, still dying in the creek. I mean, they're dying right now. I just came out of hanging a camera 30 minutes ago and saw one that I believe is dying. It got up and barely got out of there, but it was right on the water. So you add those things up, and I think it's a perfect recipe for not much movement. And I think that's probably frustrating for a lot of people when they wait all year and then you get to the rut and sweet November and all this, and you don't have the weather coming. You got lots of acorns. You've got EHD in certain spots. And you have some long sits, and that's how you got to hunt to kill them. You just got to hunt harder, longer, and as much as you possibly can to finally run into one, because sightings are few and far between, particularly of mature bucks. They're extremely few and far between based on everything we've set up here. And we've had some luck, but if you look at what really happened, 4 of those deer we killed were all the same within an hour and a half of each other. Yeah. So the weather had to be dead perfect, and we hunted, the season prior to that and the season since that, we've killed one since that night. We killed the 4, but it's just been a real challenge to actually see a mature deer on their feet and everything. The stars lined up that night and they were really moving, but it's been rather subdued since then.
Well, we definitely want to talk about that the big night that you guys had. But you're talking about just it being difficult to see deer movement. It's a real kick in the pants. So many times I have not seen a deer from the stand, but driving out of the property, there's one. I almost hit one on the way home. Like driving home in the dark, I'm seeing them all over the place.
It's kind of how the cameras are.
And the cell cams are the same. Yeah, Matt took words out of my mouth. Cell cams show the same thing. And you look at DeerCast, it'll say okay to good, and it's really predicting the nighttime movement more so than the daylight. Just because they're just in those oak trees. I mean, they're just not moving during daylight very much. To get in on them is really a challenge right now.
Keep thinking of that Garth Brooks song, Papa Loved Mama. He never hit the brakes and he was shifting gears.
Why does that make you think of this?
Because when I see a deer on the road, I'm like, maybe I should just hit it. Bring it home.
Yeah, screw it.
Get the expensive way.
I got one, honey. I think my wife would be happy. Like, can you stop now?
Are you done now?
So, Mark, you talked about it a little bit. I want to dive into that night. So it was October 28th. It was the Hunter's Moon. And, we had a little bit of luck that day at Terry's. And Cameron killed his first buck that morning. Yes. And then Forrest and Terry went out. Scott and I went out. And then you had Dustin Lynch out, Taylor out, yourself out. And am I missing one? One more, right?
Carson and Bryce were out.
Carson and Bryce, right. Yeah. So take us through this. This is incredible.
We had 5 crews, and 4 of the 5 killed. And you guys killed 2 at Terry's that same day. So we killed 6 all on the same day.
And I drew my bow back on one. I should have had one dead. I drew back 2-3 times on one that night. So we could have had more. It was a crazy night for everybody. Great encounters for everyone.
It was insane. And it was that big cold front. The first cold air was hitting us that day and blowing really hard out of the northeast. And I mean, they absolutely rocked it that night. Everything was moving. So, and then it went back to warm after it was cold for a few days there, and they moved okay, but not what I expected to see for the 30th and 31st, certainly. Everything's been just not as good as you'd hoped or not as good as you expected. And I started talking about this up here in early October. We kept saying, well, it's going to get better. And I felt like there was enough VHD and there was enough sick deer. They were acting weird then. And I said, I don't know that this year is going to get much better. And it's held true. And now you look at our forecast, we've got a miniature front coming in here for the latter part of this week. And then opening day of gun season in many, many states, including Missouri, this coming Saturday. However, the cold front just gets us to normal temperatures to slightly above normal.
Yeah.
So is it really a cold front? I mean, it's really just getting us to norm and barely above. So, however, the pressure's quite high. So I do like that. I think it'll be good through about the 12th or 13th. Then it warms right back up again. So lockdown could be really, really challenging this year.
I'm so depressed.
And that's right there through the thick of the Missouri gun season. And I don't know, that period, it's interesting because a deer, usually you see some off the wall, like midday movement anyways during that period. But with the temperatures, I feel like the last couple of years, it's kind of been that way. Like we talked about it with Terry on the rut series that I mentioned, hey, this is going to be great because through the rut here, we're going to actually have cold temperatures. Well, they were cold for like the front end of it. And then it reversed course there, and it's 80 degrees. It's crazy. So when you get back to these kind of average temperatures and you look at the mornings, and the mornings are decent in the 30s, it's okay. Will that midday movement, when it's kind of getting to the 50s, will they still kind of do what they always do and run across the fields and chase and all that stuff? Or will that be subdued, do you think?
I think it'll be subdued because you're also going into darker moon here quickly.
Yeah.
So there's another factor that I think will slow them down. So I think when we get in those high 60s there in the middle part of the week, she's going to be pretty tough because you're hitting darker moon, you're hitting lockdown, and you're hitting 13, 15 degrees above normal. I mean, to me, that's a first hour, last hour type of movement, but you get the occasional buck that is freed up and will walk at 10 o'clock, right? So, but it's not a lot of the deer, it's a few of the deer. So it's extremely challenging to hunt. And it goes back to what I was saying at the front end of this. And I don't want to sound like Mr. Pessimistic, but I think in order to succeed this year, people are going to have to hunt harder and longer than they have in years past. So I think you've just got to spend as much time in the woods and in a stand as you possibly can, and just kind of reset the expectation. You know what? I may not see a lot of deer, but if I'm going to see the right deer, I'm only going to do it through time spent in the woods.
So, Mark, as you think about someone trying to allocate their time they're spending in, like maybe someone doesn't have all day, do they kind of default back to first light, last light hunting if they have to choose?
Certainly, and I believe it'd be first light if you could choose one, or if you had to choose one period during the day, it's the first 2 or 3 hours. To me, that's the coolest period. I love the morning hunting for the rut anyway. Afternoons are oftentimes 1 to 4 o'clock, but if you add that heat and dark moon to that, it may not be there very well for you this year. I mean, it might be. I hope it will. I'll be out there, but it won't surprise me if they don't move very well in the afternoons.
So in this scenario where typically we see, we're sitting, we in the middays are typically on food plots and stuff during this period. Like we're sitting in a box blind, we can see a lot of food, right? And you kind of catch something cruising across. So this year it might be different. Does that change your strategy and make you go more into the timber and sit those middays and just kind of you're in tight on the acorns and where the deer are at? Are you kind of holding to that cover throughout the day more, or what's your strategy?
Exactly. I think you'd have to push closer to the bed than ever before, or be in it close to acorns. I mean, where we are succeeding the most and where we're seeing the most deer is cover, either a food plot next to cover or in the cover where there's a tremendous amount of acorns. I mean, it's literally like marbles up here. I don't know what it's like for you guys down there, but they don't have to move very far to find food. I mean, they're just not moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mark, does the importance of water change at all right now with the temperatures being the way they are?
Absolutely. You betcha. And there's not a lot of water sources out there right now. So the ponds we have and the creeks we have that still have water, that's also where we're finding a lot of deer. So that's a great point, Tim. I'm glad you brought that up.
I've never seen this on the bourbon property I always talk about and I never kill at. I saw
I got a lot of those.
I saw an actual shooter buck come out and hit one of the cattle watering like wells. I'd never seen that before. And it just makes you wonder if maybe it's a little different scenario. They don't have as much free water around that they used to.
No doubt. It's dry. It's as dry as I've ever seen it. And I think that's why the EHD is so bad. Are you hearing reports of it down there around St. Louis, or how is it down there?
I just heard a week ago about a bunch of EHD hitting around my new property. I have seen that the general buck numbers seem to be a little bit down compared to what I had when I first put cameras out in February and March when I bought it, and what I'm seeing now. It just doesn't quite line up. And then I had heard that just north of me, they had found 14. And then a neighbor close to me was saying like it smelled so bad he couldn't hardly, go out to his barns and stuff. So, I haven't really seen that as much, but we also haven't been there a lot. We've been monitoring on cameras and it's just been okay. So I think I kind of got hit there, but outside of that, I haven't heard about it in like St. Louis necessarily.
Yeah. I've not heard any more reports.
So
around here, I thought 2012, 98 was the worst outbreak I'd ever seen. And then 2012 was catastrophic as well. Not as bad as 98, but 2012 was really bad. And I personally believe we are in that realm and heading for worse than 12 based on what I've seen up here. It's bad. It's really bad.
So, it's super pockety. So that's certainly affecting what you guys, the results and kind of what you're seeing. And how does that affect like what mature bucks are left and them going to find the first available doe? Like, does that affect any of that kind of stuff? Like their typical activity, if there's not a lot of competition, or how does that play into it?
Well, I think in these die-offs, especially when the die-off between bucks and does is offset or unequal, you then have fewer bucks trying to breed more does, and therefore the rut will kill a bunch as well. Especially if they're already kind of sick, then the rut takes its toll when winter hits. Now, what I've noticed this year, my doe population is just as bad as the buck population. To me, this EHD is hitting everything best of what I can tell from what I see on my cameras. So it may have actually balanced it out a little bit. And the silver lining will be, in 3 or 4 or 5 years, we'll have some giants running around. But boy, it's tough to go through yet another one of these die-offs. I'm telling you, it's been really disheartening up here. And of course, back in 98 when that happened, and then in like 06 or 07, I kind of shifted gears a little bit and I tried to expect, because it is pockety, to your point, I tried to have more satellite farms. So that's the only thing keeping us in the game, is the fact that we do have some populations that seem unaffected, but we have a great many that are affected. So we're being very careful in terms of harvest there. We're trying to stick to deer that are at a minimum 5.5, and we're really trying to target on 6s and 7s if we know of them. So we'll see how the year finishes out, but she's been a tough one thus far. And the deer that I know, there's deer that are still alive, they're just not moving. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're either eating acorns or sick and not moving. I think they're sick personally.
Has that changed your? I know, like you guys in general, Terry's the same way. Strategy is very predominantly based around a food plot architecture and getting close to bedding. You guys get super close to the bedrooms with your food plots. But that being said, are you getting into the timber at all here, or like how are you adjusting?
Absolutely. We just finished hanging a set on top of a ridge that I haven't hunted in, oh my goodness, I'll bet before Wade was here. So 13, 14 years. And it's just, we're just trying to get back in the bedroom more on some of these spots that historically were quite good. And we've hung a couple sets actually this week. So hopefully that pays off. We're going to possibly hunt that one in the morning.
Mark, I don't know if you guys are seeing this, but just among some of the guys I'm talking to, my personal experience right now is I'm not seeing scrapes. Like historically, where I've seen scrapes before, they're not there this year. And I'm just having a hard time finding the numbers that I normally do. And I don't think a whole lot has happened. Like I haven't lost a whole lot of deer. It's just I'm not seeing the scrapes that I used to.
I'm hearing that a lot too.
Same. And I think they're sick. They're not moving. I mean, that's my interpretation of it.
Yeah.
I've seen some bucks that just don't even look good. We had one come out the other night for Perry and Ellie and Coondog. And he walked out in the plot. He rebedded like 5 times while he was out in the plot. You know, this is abnormal, you know, so whatever type of VHD this is, it's killing them very slowly. And part of that slow process is they're sick and they don't feel good. And they're just not moving. But yeah, scraping activity is as low as it's ever been, as far as I'm concerned. Same with rubs. I don't see many rubs hardly at all this year. And this is November the 8th. And I keep thinking it's going to pop, but I don't think they're there to pop. And the ones that are don't feel like it. So I have a feeling, that's why I say I think this die-off could exceed the catastrophic die-off we had in 2012. I mean, it feels so much like 12 and perhaps a little worse. It's not even funny to me. So again, I don't want to be the doomsday guy, but if by chance you're having great movement, that's a very positive sign. You probably don't have it in your neck of the woods. Again, it'd be a good pocket, right? But if you're experiencing the type things we're talking about, where not a lot of scraping, not a lot of rubbing, not seeing deer on their feet, cameras are dead other than at night, you may have it in your area, coupled with the acorns and the warm temps. And, you know, is it ever going to rain again? I mean, it's just amazing how rough it's been this year.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, if there's a deer season that you ever wanted to take off, maybe this is it.
Well, that's the tough part, because everybody's trying. This is the period where most of the hunters are out in the woods and everybody's excited about it. And I mean, it's great. I'm seeing, and on the Facebook pages that I follow, I'm seeing success, but I'm not seeing a ton of mature bucks necessarily. I'm seeing a lot of 3-year-old, which is great. A lot of 3-year-old, 4-year-old type deer, and more of the occasional, really mature looking buck. Mm-hmm. So that makes me wonder sometimes, is like, oh, well, are they moving? Are they there? And if they are they moving daylight? My pictures are just predominantly all overnight, almost all of them.
It'd be worth asking the question on your Facebook group page there with the Rack Pack, or perhaps the comments to this YouTube version. What are people seeing out there? Or are you seeing similar things that we're talking about? Name the state you're at and what part of the state. Let us know if your deer are acting normal or if they're acting a little bit subdued this year.
Yeah, for sure. Well, so let's backtrack then. And you touched on it a little bit, but that night that you guys all killed, and then you followed up a couple days later and killed a really nice buck there in Iowa. So what kind of the detail around that, the positive side of your season so far?
Yeah, absolutely. That night was incredible. I mean, I was down in a blind that I didn't have much service on. It was actually the same place where I filmed Perry kill that big 8 earlier in the year. In Missouri. And that was part of a strategy, because that big 8 showed up and the shooter kind of disappeared. And we were like, I wonder if he's running him out of there. Now, last year they coincided there. They were both in that spot and they were both there the full fall. But as bucks age, sometimes they get a little bit more territorial. And we were like, hey, if we get a shot at that deer tonight, Perry said, I'm going to kill that deer. I was like, great. He shot the deer. And the buck I was looking for still didn't show up. And then finally he did. But I called him Mr. Daylight, because the previous 2 seasons, he'd walk out on that field almost every evening. And this year, I never had a single daylight photo of him until 2 nights before I killed him. And that counts Summer Velvet as well. He just would not daylight there. And I think, did they launch that? I think they launched that episode. And we talk about, how daylight he was and show all the footage and all the pictures. And then this year, he left me scratching my head. He just would not daylight. And I got 1 daylight series of him. And then the night I shot him, we walked out at 5:15. And we had plenty of light left. So killed him. I get back to the barn. Taylor surprises me, her and Perry, after me telling them about my buck. I look down and they point out the blood on her pants. So boom, I was fired up about that. Then they break the news to me that DL had also killed. Then we get back to Iowa. Myself and Taylor's deer were in Missouri, so we got them in the cooler. We drive back to Iowa, and Carson and Bryce surprised us as well with that giant that Carson had killed. Just a big, big, beautiful deer on a farm he had just gained permission on. Gained permission, went in, put up cameras. He sent me a picture of that deer. I was like, man, you need to jump in there and kill him. And they waited till they had the right wind and the right cold front and got that one killed. So 4 down in one night. I don't ever recall that happening, coupled with Cameron's deer and Forest deer. I mean, we've never done 6 on the show 13 in one day that I can recall. Maybe we've killed 2 or 3 late season up here, but I don't recall that kind of a day. Or maybe rifle season we've killed a few, but it was pretty special and pretty incredible. So we celebrated into the night that night. That was a fun celebration. And then the deer that I shot, the other deer that I shot in Iowa was a few nights ago. That was on the 5th. And that was a deer that was on that farm last year. And he hadn't shown back up this year yet. And all of a sudden on November 1st or 2nd, he showed back up, and man, he had blown. And that farm is an exception to the rest of our farms. Like, our pictures are daylight there. There's quite a bit of movement. There's not a lot of deer there, but the ones that are there are moving. And it's also the farm where Wade had killed Shatterbrains, the mid 170s. So we had been hunting a deer or 2 up here where I live, where I'm sitting right now, and we couldn't run into them. I mean, they were dark, and a couple of them went MIA, and we're just banging our head against the wall. We'd seen some nice deer, but we weren't finding the normal deer. And Wade's like, man, why don't we shift gears here a little bit and go try that deer that just showed up? I was like, that's the best idea I've heard all season. So we got in the truck. We were actually at our spot, about to get out and go down in on this buck I call the tumor buck that I've been hunting most of the year up here. And the farmer pulled in and was starting to hay. And we were like, and the night before we were hunting that buck, and a farmer pulled in while we were sitting there and started spreading fertilizer and manure on his fields. He cleared our field 3 times. Then that night he starts to hay, and we were like, we're not doing this again. So we left. We made a big play, drove 35 minutes to the south, literally got out of the truck, ran in the blind, got in, closed the door, and within, I'm talking a minute, 2 deer walked onto the field. Like, we just made it in time. Wow. And we sat down, got settled in. And I think we shot the 5th buck we saw that night. They really moved well, and that was him.
Nice.
Now, he came in and left 3 different times. The footage is just incredible. It's breathtaking. He's such a big frame, giant Iowa deer. He kept running does all over this big pasture we could see. And then finally, with just a few minutes to spare, he came down and gave me a 38-yard shot.
Nice. Deer that big, like, he's galloping. He's just like loping around. You can tell he's a big animal.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was cool to see him coming over that hill so many times.
Well, obviously I knew the deer was killed. That's why it was a journal post. But, like, how many times do deer hang up just out of range with a minute or 2 of daylight? He was so close to being safe there. It was just unreal how they know, like, they can count you down almost.
Yeah, no doubt. And he was around us all evening. I mean, that guy just kept coming in. And I almost shot him about, a few minutes prior to that at 50. And I was like, that's an ill-advised shot. I'm not doing that. And then when he came back into the plot that last time, I was like, I didn't even range him. I just guessed it. And luckily I guessed correctly.
How do you continue to keep your composure then when your target's out there and he's kind of running all over the place? And so it's one thing for them to kind of surprise you and it happens quick. It's another thing when you have time to calculate. And do you go through kind of a roller coaster of emotions where it's excitement, then calm, and then excitement, and then you're planning ahead? Like, if he goes here, I range this, or like, take us through the mental side of that night once the deer first comes out.
It's really a focus issue for me. Like, I was bound and determined to get a shot at that deer because he had been on us for so long. It's kind of like that turkey that hangs up and won't come in. And you're like, man, if it was very similar to a turkey that wouldn't finish. And man, if he comes in, if he gets to that spot, I know I can get a shot. And that's kind of the way the deer was. And once he got there, I don't know, it was focus and instinct, I guess. I mean, I drew back and I had him shot within seconds. I tried to stop him, and then I had to scoot just a little bit as he was going to the right. And then Wade stopped him, not knowing if he was in my window or not. And then I scooted a little bit more and got to him and made the shot.
Nice.
It was a good shot. I love watching shot placement, especially when they're perfect like that. It's just beautiful.
It is nice.
And then he runs off with the glowing knock in him, which is even better.
Yeah.
He did. He ran about 100, 125 and blood trail that wide, and it was a short track job to where he died there. So it was, he actually went through a giant creek and came up just on the other side and then died right on that top. So, which actually made it easier for us because the crossing's easy to get to him. So, it was a fun track job and luckily an easy retrieve.
Two things to mention real quick, going back a little bit. Carson's deer, if someone hasn't seen that yet, go check it out on our YouTube channel or in DeerCast. It's the Dream Season live episode 4, I think. It will be one of the coolest hunts all year for sure, but it may be one of the coolest hunts we've ever had of that deer running in, snort weave them in.
Yeah. Big frame also running off the hill. That was awesome.
And then the other one is Taylor's deer, just the character. How old was that deer? The character and the mass on that deer is insane.
Well, that was a new farm for us that we purchased this year. I actually sold some dirt in Iowa, as did DL, and we went in and purchased this 334 acres. He purchased the north and I purchased the south at an auction. And we knew the previous owner, and they told us about this old deer that they could never kill. And I got pictures of this deer and I sent it to them and I said, do you know this guy? And they were like, yeah, that deer used to be 160-inch 10 point his whole life. And he's slowly but surely going downhill. We think he's 9.5 or 10.5. And they said he just wouldn't daylight for us. We never could get him killed. We tried and couldn't do it. They said he's literally impossible to kill. So we nicknamed him Impossible. And I think because of his age, he probably got a little bit more sloppy than when they were hunting him because they're great hunters. I mean, so we got lucky that he got a little sloppy and he started food plotting every night on a big green field that we tucked in that was not there previously. We put it inside the cover and it's surrounded by acorns. And I'm so glad we decided to put it there because he was daylighting there and another plot. And that night that she was there, she saw the biggest deer on the farm. And then she saw the oldest deer on the farm. So that's how good that evening was. They both daylighted there, but she saw the biggest deer after she had already shot this one. So it was quite a sit for her and very exciting.
Is she going back in there for gun season? Sounds like a good spot to go.
I think it'll be tough to pull her out of that. So we'll see if she goes there. Bruce is in as well, so he may be sitting on that top. It's a beautiful spot, man. I mean, it's gorgeous.
That's such a fun night. I said leading into it, I felt like it was going to be the best part of the season was that like 3 or 4 day stretch. I didn't realize it was going to be 80 and 75 and stuff like that this first week in November. No. But I don't know. I felt like that was going to be the best period of the year unless we get extremely cold temperatures late season and you got like a late season food source. And I think likely that's going to go down for the season as the best 3 or 4 days of the entire year, just based on the moon conditions, the pressure, the temperatures. Like it was a perfect storm, really.
It was. It all lined up, and I thought the same as well. Ahead of it, I said this will be the best 3 or 4 days we have, and it was certainly the best day on the 28th.
Yeah, so fun.
Yeah, so much fun. It's fun, but this year she's a little bit of a grind. I'll tell you, we're putting the hours in up here. I mean, I haven't hunted this many mornings in a lot of years, and sat midday, and I mean, we're just grinding it as hard as we can to run into these deer. And so many hours of nothing moving. Yes. I mean, nothing. No does, no small bucks. It's 2012 all over.
Well, and the other thing, I had a buddy shot a deer in Illinois last night and it wasn't able to find him. And he thinks he hit him a little bit back. I was like, man, with the heat and everything, even if you find him, like your window of being able to recover the meat is just so small right now. Yeah, it's like early season. I mean, it's like hunting September. It's brutal. Yeah, I was out in my early season gear Sunday afternoon, and it felt like an early season hunt, except for the woods are orange and yellow around me. It's just such a weird vibe.
Yeah, and if you think about rifle season, many camps depend on the weather to hang their meat for the week.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's out the window this week, right? So people have to be ready to field dress them and get them to a locker or a cooler if you have access to one, because they're not going to last, not long.
Yeah. Yeah,
That is going to change the way a lot of camps have to operate.
Yeah, a lot of people, they got the pole and everybody's hanging them up, and they're just hanging there for. So you better have some ice, some coolers full of ice. Just be prepared.
It's not going to be a pleasurable week. I mean, the first 2 or 3 days are going to be great. I think 11, 12, 13th. I think it's going to be wonderful. I think this, I don't know when this one is airing, but tomorrow and Friday should be really, really good.
Yeah, if you still have an archery tag leading into, we're focusing Missouri here, but there's several other states I think come in this weekend as well for firearm season. So, anyways, these next couple of days should be great, across the board, because most of the Midwest I think would be in the same, and the South would be in the same boat. So,
yeah, for sure. Yeah.
All right.
I'm going to jump over to that real wild clip.
Let's see it.
Let's do it. All right. It's brought to you by Hunter Specialties, from scent elimination sprays, which you're going to need in the heat, to the DoD signature series of deer calls. HS has everything you need for your hunt.
Mark, have you guys done much in the way of calling or rattling here this past week?
I have. I had a big one come in 3 different times, and I couldn't get him killed. He kept coming into the backside of my tree. He was he was tending a doe, and another sign where he didn't look good. Like, she was on her feet and he kept bedding down.
Weird.
And we watched him for 30 minutes within 40 yards, and I couldn't shoot that deer. I tried as hard as I could to get around that tree on both sides. And luckily we had a lot of wind speed, so I was able to get by with murder, and I just could not get him. And he'd fade off a little bit, and I'd grunt him back or snort wheeze him back, but he never would come in my lane. I come to full draw on him twice and did not get him shot. But yeah, absolutely. I love that call. And I called at another deer the other day and stopped him, and I used a rack jack, and he turned like he was going to come, and then he went running back to his does. So I've been using them. I love that rack jack, man. It's so compact and it's easy to take, and it sounds like 2 deer fighting, man. I really like it. It's much easier and much safer than rattling antlers.
Yeah, no doubt. So how aggressive were you getting on the deer that was kind of close to you that you drew on a couple of times? How aggressive with the calling or the snort wheeze? Like pretty loud, or with the
No, I was trying to do it real soft because he was right there with us in the grass, and I was just trying to pull him out of the grass to get him into our lane. So I was doing it, and I was turning my head, and trying not to let him know where it was coming from. But had him fooled, but he just wouldn't come down there. He wouldn't leave that doe. And ultimately they ran off together. He went chasing her,
Are you seeing that the first does, like, I feel like the most mature bucks have gotten with them a couple days ago, and they would about be freeing up about this weekend? The ones that the first available does and the mature bucks that got on them, would those mature bucks be starting to find the next doe yet, or no?
I think so. That bell curve occurs, and there's a lot of bucks that get sucked into 1 or 2 does or a few does, call it 10, 15% of the herd come in. Mm-hmm. And then as we start to reach peak estrus around the 14th, there's a bunch of them that are starting to pop. And I think that's what causes that frenzy you see 10, 11, 12. Veterans Day is always like generally all day movement, which is opening day this year. I really feel like 10th and 11th could be 2 of the premier days this year for the overall rut.
Perfect. I hijacked the real wild clip. Sorry.
We'll still do it.
All right, let's do it. What do we have?
All right, let's take a look here. Whoa, we got 2 bull elks. They're tangled up together, and they got a tree separating them. And there's a guy trying to horse them apart, and they're just locked. And now he's got help.
I saw this on Instagram. It's crazy.
That is nuts.
You got to be pretty brave to go. I always felt like you guys were crazy when you went to unlock like big bucks, but that's like next level.
Kill you.
Yeah, be a big animal.
There they go. He got them loose.
And man, good for those guys.
They're both like, what just happened? He's dizzy.
Man, that is quite a find for footage. I credit those guys for producing it and credit the team for bringing that one to this podcast. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
It kind of it shows like the conservation mindedness of hunters, that if they're really the bloodthirsty killers that they're often portrayed to be.
You got two, right there.
Yeah, it's like, why aren't they killing them? But they care about the resource and the animals.
Yeah.
Huh.
No doubt.
Wow.
Pretty crazy. Pretty wild.
I don't know. What would you do in that situation?
I would try to help, but I'd
Call
be
for
scared.
help?
I'd be scared to death the whole time.
They can smell your fear.
Well, that's fine.
Well, that animal, I mean, a whitetail could kill you, but that one could kill you quick.
That's what I'm saying. Like, those are big animals. Like, they come after you, you know, you don't have much, you can't put up much of a fight. It's not like you could hide behind much there.
Mm-mm.
The way that the trees and stuff look.
No. And people could say you died doing what you loved.
Not really.
Freeing helpless animals.
I could think of a billion other ways to die that I'd be happier with.
Choking on a donut.
Yeah, that's on the list. All right. Let's jump into the question of the day. So the question of the day is proudly brought to you by Cold Steel, professional blades for real hunters. And we actually have an audio version today.
From Nick
Fox.
Hi, Matt and Tim. My name is Nick. I'm from Midwestern Wisconsin. I'm married with 4 boys and a baby girl. Boys' ages range from 15, 9, 8, and 4. Baby girl is 2. All of which have showed a great interest in the outdoors and hunting. I mean, it starts from scouting to setting stands to the harvest to the track and bringing them home and processing. My question is, how do I decide or manage what kid goes hunting and when, while at the same time trying to keep it fair? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Thanks.
I bet that's pretty tough. Mark, I mean, you had one to deal with, so it's a little different, but what are your thoughts before we jump into it?
You know, I would probably make that as much of a family affair as possible, as often as I could. In other words, I would try to take more than one at a time if the stands allowed for it, or if they had a safe position to go do so. And if that didn't happen, then that'd probably be some merit-based system. So in other words, the more effort they give around the house and grades and so on and so forth, they're earning their way to go hunting with dad. You know, it definitely would be merit-based in my household. But I'd try to take them all if I could, you know, and put them to work, get them out there and get them working on stands and putting up cameras and get them engaged in the process. And at the very least, you just rotate, you know, go right down the line and start at the top or start at the bottom and work your way.
Yeah, he's kind of, I think about like Steve France. Steve France is kind of in a similar situation. He's got 3 boys and a little girl, and the 3 boys are all ate up with hunting, and you see him all on Critical Mass, you know, and he just kind of rotates them through, but his brother might take one while he's with another one, or, you know, there might be 2 in a blind with him, or, you know, he's always kind of switching out. So I find that neat how he's always taking his kids hunting, but I could see where that's a challenge. I mean, you know, you got a couple that are interested, you want to give them undivided attention, like one-on-one time, but the seasons, it's not like it lasts all year. So you kind of got a short and sweet part of the year to go. So like you, Mark, I think I'd try to take as many as I could at once. Sitting in a ground blind or sitting in a box blind, if you can, homemade blind, or a 2-person, you know, ladder stand or something like that, you know, to get as many out as possible.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm picking my favorite and putting all my chips in that basket and just see how it works.
So you just go with yourself.
I do enjoy my own company. Very much so.
Yeah. Well, my Lola, she like cries and says she wants to go. I invited her twice this year. And she's
when it comes time to actually go, it's a different story.
And I had never invited her until this year because she's just wild and crazy. And I was like, all right, you want to come with me? The temperature was good and all that. And she's like, I don't know, maybe next time.
I like
Dad.
the idea of it more than the actuality of it.
I was telling Tim about Cameron's hunt a little bit. And so Cameron, I think the best win here, because he's not necessarily ate up with it. He's interested in it. And I'm trying not to push too much because I just want him to enjoy it, you know? So when he went home, my mom came up to deer camp and she was hanging out a little bit, and she took Cameron home the next day after he killed so I could stay and continue to hunt that good period we've been talking about. So Miranda told me that when he got home, she was asking him about the hunt and his experience. And she said something like, well, you did it now. You don't have to go do it again. You proved you could do it. Got that behind you. And he said that he wants to go do it again. So I thought I gotta win. That's a win.
That's definitely a win.
Yeah.
And he should talk him into have mom coming with.
I don't know. She went once with me when we were dating, and she pretty much said she's not doing it again.
Check that box.
I told her to stop moving, and I could see the glare in her eyes. This is actually a funny story. Mark will appreciate it because John Williams was filming us. We're at Terry's, and John Williams was a longtime Drury Outdoors team member, and he's at the time he was a retired principal. Yeah. He was probably, I'd say, in his 60s, maybe late 60s. Well, anyways, John was basically hanging out the window, moving. Deer were out, and he's just moving and filming. And I'm not going to tell John Williams to stop moving.
He's your elder.
Yeah, I'm not going to be disrespectful. But Miranda was sitting next to me, and she'd move a little bit. I'm like, stop moving. And I could see her eyes through the head net just kind of like crinkle, like she's glaring. So we get back to camp, and after he had left, she's like, how comes that guy didn't have to stop moving? I was like, well, I'm not going to tell him to stop moving. So that was the last time.
John's his own man.
Yeah, John's going to do what he wants. So
kinda set the tone for the whole marriage, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, she's not been interested since.
Yeah.
Way to ruin her evening.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. The wildlife word this week is made possible by Tracker Off-Road. See, Kevin Van Dam killed a nice buck there in Michigan through his buck in the back of his tracker.
He did. I just saw something on his Instagram stories. He attached a huge leaf blower to the front of his tracker, and his son Nick was blowing the leaves off of the path into his stand with that leaf blower. So he had it attached to the front of the tracker, and he was just driving it in with the leaf blower on. But I'm talking like a massive leaf blower, and he basically blew the whole path out, all the leaves out on his way into the stand. I've never seen.
That's awesome.
I don't know that I would have done the noise. Like I was thinking like that's a lot of noise, but maybe it doesn't matter if you already have the noise of the 800 and the side by side or whatever. But I did think like that was a pretty good trick to just do it very quickly. But that was just a couple days ago. I saw that.
Brilliant. I wonder if he hunted that same stand and killed his buck out of it.
This was after. So I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. Huh. Okay. So, whitetail bucks may travel up to 6 miles during this time of year. Is it A, the rut, B, Black Friday, C, the summer solstice, or D, garage sale season?
I feel like you're not trying anymore.
I struggled with this one.
Mark, what do you think it is?
I'm going to say rut.
Yes, same.
Can I go out on a limb there?
I was thinking summer solstice, but
I should have just apologized for this one before we even started it.
Instead of giving us options, you should say the answer.
Oh, yeah. The rut.
The rut. All right.
There we go. That's a long way to go.
6 miles is a long way to go.
I bet they don't this year.
No.
Although you do wonder, and I follow like the NDA, National Deer Association or Alliance, National Deer Alliance, I think. Anyways, I follow their page, and you see some of these studies and you're like, geez, how are they moving this far? Like you see deer disappear on your place and you wonder what the hell happened to them.
They're out touring.
They basically, that's what I just watched an Instagram story about this where I forget what he called it, but he basically said they always do come back. The problem is they might get killed before they come back to their home range.
It is a problem.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, this year you'll be sitting in your stand going, I haven't had a picture in a week. Is he dead in HD? Is he on a walkabout? Is he locked down with a doe? There's a lot of where is he at going on this year, and you really it's hard to anticipate what the heck's going on out there. Other than it's tough.
I know what they called it, an expedition. I think it was like his name was Matt Ross. Maybe does that sound familiar? Anyways, I think he called it their expedition, kind of a walkabout, right? And he said they'll come back to their range, but I
always say walkabout, and likewise you can pick up a new buck.
Yeah,
we had a giant cruise through here 190-inch deer one night, big buck, and he hadn't been back. So I'm like, well, is he going to go on another walkabout here during the rut? Did he die of EHD, or where did he even come from? But it was the best deer I've had a picture of all year. But he was here one night. That was it.
And that's always so exciting. You're like, oh, look at this. You always see guys like, I got this picture of this deer once in October.
And he gone.
It's like, well, it could randomly pop back up. Sure.
Yeah.
But it is kind of random, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is random. Yep.
Yeah.
At that point in October, that night, there were 4 different bucks that I thought were 180 or better on this farm that I'm sitting on right now.
Holy cow.
And right now, I would say that number is 0.
Ooh, it's like, where'd they go? And yeah. And you're right. They could be locked down with a doe on the next farm over, on your farm, just not moving.
They've been gone for quite a while, though. These have.
So these aren't.
Have you talked to Chris Duncan? What's going on around his farm? It's horrible over there. I mean, just horrible. He sent me a picture yesterday. His neighbor doesn't have a very big piece of property, and his neighbor went on a walk. Check this out. Small piece of property, went on a walk.
Oh no.
All those?
Holy heck. Some really good deer in there too.
Oh my God.
So if you're just
how
listening,
many are in
Mark
that
is
picture?
showing us a picture of, I don't know how many
1, 2,
buck
3,
skulls.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? 10?
I didn't count it. It was too many.
Wow.
And then Chris had found one yesterday in addition to those laying there dead. And the sad part is they're still dying.
And that's your whole herd. I mean, that'll take years to get back.
Yeah.
4 or 5 years.
He's lost well over 60%.
Oh my.
Ouch.
And that's the same number that I'm at. Like, I believe it's 50-60% that we've lost. That's my guess. And everybody around here calls me the doomsday, the grim reaper. I'm always talking about EHD, and I'm like, well, where are they at then? Well, what about that buck? And what about that buck? Oh yeah, those are the 30 or 40% that's still alive. Where's the 60% we had during the summer?
They called you that before the season too, so I wouldn't take it personally.
The reality is your deer numbers, your deer density in that area in general, the neighborhood is so high, you would know based on your camera inventory. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, you kind of have it down to a science.
Yeah, I mean, the cameras don't lie, and we've got them in great spots, historically unbelievable spots. And to Tim's point earlier, there's scrapes that aren't open, and it's like I said, it's just like 2012. But we'll see how it ends up. We really won't know the true outcome and effect of this until July and August of next summer, when we start taking summer inventory. We may have some inkling, but by the end of the season, when we pull our cameras down, then they've got the full winter ahead, January, February, March. Well, you're going to lose some bucks. They're going to shed their antlers, and then you're going to lose them. Like, you watch this year, late season, there's going to be a bunch of big mature deer already shed way early, just because they're sick and their testosterone is not going to hang in there very late.
Skinny, kind of limping, hoof rot, those kind of situations.
Mostly EHD. Yeah. It won't be hoof rot so much unless we get wet here, but as dry as we are, we won't get that. But
well, I thought that was kind of part of EHD or one of the things. No, they don't. What is it that happens to their hoofs with EHD? Isn't there a side effect?
Slipper hoof.
Yeah, they get very tender-footed. The bottom of their hooves get almost concave, and they get very tender-footed, and you see them kind of tender-footing their way around. But hoof rot will occur when they get some sort of injury from the rut on their legs or on their foot. Then they get mud in it. Then it gets infected, swells up, and their hooves actually they dang near explode, or their
like a
legs up above their hoof, just really gets big, and there's a lot of infection in there. Yeah. So that's what hoof is. And that can travel throughout their body and kill them too. So.
Yeah. This has been a depressing.
Yeah. Let's get to our shout outs. So apologies in advance. This is one of our new Rack Pack members. I did not get his name. He just joined up, but he says, "You guys are blue collar, good old boys from the heartland. You guys don't put off that you're better than your audience. You can joke and laugh about your failures. The guests you have on are the same way, but when it comes down to the serious topics, you guys can educate and make it easy to understand."
Well, thank you. We love to be relatable.
Well, if there's anything, that's what we are. If you're struggling, tune in. You'll feel better about yourself.
Mark, were you about to say something there before we jumped into that?
Have you had a more pessimistic guest this year than me today?
No, we haven't.
I hate to say it, but I think it's reality. I really do. So that's why I bring it up. If people are struggling, there's probably reasons why.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Well, and because it's so pockety, that's the tough part, because guys, and we kind of see this with DeerCast, say it's saying it's, through this stretch, it's poor, it's bad. Mark, you and I looked at it and looked at the algorithm, and we're kind of trying to think like, all right, what's going on here? Why is it saying, the temperatures and the pressure, and there's a lot of reasons, but you get a guy that's like, hey, it said bad and I killed a deer this morning. It's like, okay, it is the rut. It can still happen. And so I feel like this EHD topic is kind of similar. It's like, yes, it's bad in your area. It's bad in a lot of areas, but there might be people out there listening like, man, I'm seeing great movement and activity. And yeah, it's pockety. It's always been that way. You could have been missed, luckily.
It is. I will say this. I feel like the algorithm, in terms of what we're seeing on a daily basis, we have a lot of cell cams out, and it's as accurate as it's ever been, man. It has been spot on for us in terms of it's been on top of the days that have been worth hunting, and it's been right on top of the days not worth hunting.
Yeah. Yeah. And this time of year, anything can happen. If you got a day, if people are taking their rutcation,
time.
Sure, go hunt. Mark's saying hunt harder, hunt longer. It might take more, but it can happen. It's a lot harder to find those big mature bucks walking daylight during this period.
Yeah, or see many deer. It just makes it a little tougher.
Yeah. All right. Speaking of the Rack Pack, we are going to welcome some new Rack Pack members. So lately here, Tim's allowed me to be an admin.
For now.
So I've been able to go in and approve all the new members. It's pretty funny to listen to or to read the answers they give to the entry questions. Most of them are kind of like this shout out where it's like, I like the self-deprecating humor.
100%.
I love the expert guests and their education and the BS stories. I had a guy, and he was older because I looked at his profile. He's like, I like the fart sounds. He's like, I'm 50 years old and I still get a kick out of the fart sounds. It's like, I got one.
It's universal. So, if you're a guy, it's universal.
Yeah. Well, luckily that's our audience. All right. So here's the new members. We got Peyton Major, Levi Lazier, Kyle Wheeler, Gerald E. Tag Soup. Gerald E. Tag Soup, I think, is the fake name this week. We got
could be
Dalton Brazel, Hunter Smith, that could be fake, Stephen Chris, Corey Cameron, that also seems odd, Joshua Traverse, and Peyton Mattis. Guys, I didn't read ladies in there. Guys, welcome to the Rack Pack. I hope you enjoy. We've seen quite the influx in members here.
Yeah, 2.4K.
Not bad. Yeah, a lot of cool. What's cool about it are the hero shots we're seeing. One guy had a video of his kill and he needed advice. This was really neat. This was a couple days ago and the shot looked great and he was having trouble figuring out what he hit. And I think on the blood trail and lost the deer, something like that. And even Forrest and Terry came in there with some advice and
Perry
a lot of
jumped
other people.
in too.
Perry, yeah. So he found the deer. So it was neat. It looked like a great shot too, but for whatever reason ran a long way.
Never know. Yeah.
It's neat to see that kind of stuff. That's what the group's kind of made for.
I'm kind of over all the hero pictures.
I enjoy it still.
I don't care about their kills.
I've been looking at everybody else's hero pictures. So
I know, look at some more.
Yeah.
All right, Mark. Well, hey, thanks for bringing the dose of reality. I know we talked about is a lot of kind of downer stuff, but it's the reality of what we're facing right now. And maybe it gives people a little more hope that they're not alone here and that there's more going on that's going into this really tough deer season than just what they're doing or not doing.
Any parting words?
No, just good luck and hunt hard. Put more hours in if you want to succeed. I think it's going to take a few more this year than years past, but you can still do it. It's going to take you a little bit longer.
All right. Well,
that's what we'll do.
Tim, we're going to have to hunt a little harder.
I'm leaving the office right now.
All right. Bye. All right. Thanks, Mark. We appreciate you. Everybody, until next time, be careful. Wear your safety harnesses. If you're hunting with a rifle, a firearm, please identify your target, wear your hunter's orange, and be safe out there. Till next time, peace out.
DeerCast is now supercharged with maps. Get ahead of your game with killer new features like live Doppler radar, wind check out to 5 days, virtual rain gauges, GPS path tracking, and more. Plus, get our 14-day revolutionary DeerCast prediction and access to DeerCast Track. Prep, predict, and pursue with DeerCast.
We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV is brought to you by DeerCast. Prep, predict, and pursue your target buck.